up dive. Feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, so I remember I share and subscribe. Join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories are talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the Untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Good morning, monsters, and welcome to this week's episode of Monsters on the Edge here on the Untold Radio Network. I am your host, Barnaby Jones, from Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. Guys, we have a great show here for you today. We're going to be talking about myths and legends and how they get started with our guest today. But first, guys, we are inching ever closer to the Cryptids, Anomalies, and Paranormal Convention here in Appleton, Wisconsin. It is going to be an amazing event that kicks off Friday, May 9th, with a Bigfoot expedition and VIP dinner. Saturday is the convention and over 30 vendors and speakers, and the premiere of the brand new documentary, The Hairy Man of Dairyland, Wisconsin's Bigfoot.
Right here in the road, and it was right on the line, standing right there.
Whatever it was breaking trees, breaking branches, and I've never done it before.
And from the basement door, I was like, Louie, I'm pretty sure there's a footprint out here.
And that's when the rocks started coming out of this tree line.
All I seen was hair. And it was like arched over right here.
And then out of nowhere we hear this loud, like earth-shaking grunt.
It rolled its shoulder and grabbed the ground and pulled itself towards my vehicle.
And I heard a plunk, and I come over here, and that squash was laying about right there in the middle of my garden, you know.
How do you walk in that in bare feet at 30-degree temperature?
Did you see that?
What was that? I saw something dark in the light from the right to the left.
It was big.
How big was it?
That is going to be coming out May 10th at our convention, and then you can find it on our Patreon account as well as Paraflix, Paranormal Plus streaming platform. So you guys can check that out if you want there. Also, guys, Saturday evening is going to be the Psychic Gallery reading with Angela Zabel. That is included in your ticket for your Saturday events. If you guys cannot make it out in person, head on over to our website and get yourself a virtual ticket. That's right, guys. We are going to be streaming all of our guest speakers throughout the day, live or at your convenience. You can watch them at a later date. With the virtual ticket, you can check out that stream. And then, guys, coming up June 7th, we are headed to the Chicago Paranormal Convention in Countryside, Illinois. It's a great event. Always a wonderful time. Admission to that is only just $1. You can't beat that. Head on out and check that out as well. And then in September, I will be in Gaze, Illinois for SilCon. And that's what we got coming up for Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. Guys, if you want to read up on all things creepy and spooky and paranormal, check out Hangar One Publishing.
Hangar One Publishing. Books that explore the unknown.
They're after my story.
Legends leap off the pages of our books.
You think you're the only one? They're under my tail, too.
From UFOs to cryptids, Bigfoot and beyond.
Who's behind all this?
Hangar One Publishing, where every legend is revealed.
It's Hangar One Publishing. They're unraveling all of our mysteries.
Dive in. Real videos, sights, and sounds with our immersive book technology.
I guess their secrets are out now.
But in the best possible way.
From Bigfoot tracks to galactic trails, we cover it all.
We should get out of here before it's too late.
You're right, let's plan.
Escaping reality? Dive into ours. Hangar One Publishing, revealing the universe's best-kept secrets, one book at a time.
Hey, Untold Radio Network fans. Want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
All right, guys, as I mentioned, we are pre-recorded today. So my guest is Ron Murphy. He has been investigating the stuff of nightmares for over 30 years. He has investigated the things that go bump in the night and meticulously researched the historical and psychological context of myth and legends from around the world. Mr. Murphy seeks to uncover the archetypal precedent of the monsters that haunt our collective thoughts. It's going to be a great show. Please welcome Ronald Murphy. How you doing, man?
Hey, folks. Thanks for having me on the show, my friend.
Oh, it is my pleasure. It is my pleasure, man. So this is really exciting. There's so many different ways that we can go with this show. So many different things. You have amazing books. I want to kind of go through this real quick. I put them in the show notes as well for everybody. You got On Mermaids. Like this is really interesting. I love the folklore and stuff that goes with all that. We have the Chestnut Ridge. So I want to ask you this. So I've heard of like the beast of Chestnut Ridge. This is like a werewolf creature, but this is a goblin universe.
Right. So that was the first book that I've ever written, to tell you the truth. So, I've been researching for a number of years, and I was just starting to collect a lot of reports, and I wanted to put some information into kind of a compendium about all the strange things that happen in this Chestnut Ridge. Now, the Chestnut Ridge runs almost 100 miles. It covers about 4 counties in Pennsylvania, and it terminates in Morgantown, West Virginia. But if you look at this stretch as a whole, there are Bigfoot sightings, and there's hauntings, and UFO encounters, and dogman encounters. So something very strange is going on in this particular geographical area. So I borrowed a little bit of John Keel's words and decided to subtitle it "The Goblin Universe," because there's really no scientific explanation for what's going on here. It is kind of the mecca and the epicenter for all kinds of strange paranormal activity. And this was, like I said, this was the first book that I ever wrote, bringing it back, eyewitness accounts and my own research as well too. I found it very, very fascinating. But writing a book is a difficult task, So I completed this book, and I thought, I'm going to take a break for a while. Now, my daughter Willow was a wee girl at the time. I think that she might have been about 6 years old whenever I finished that book. And I remember she came to me and she said, "Hey, you write about Bigfoot and things. Have you ever thought about writing mermaids?" Because she was very, entranced by the whole mermaid, the accounts and the legends. So the first book that I wrote after my Chestnut Ridge book was on mermaids. And without my daughter asking me about that, I would not have had this whole series of books that focus on different archetypes from around the world.
Wow, that is awesome.
Yeah.
I really I don't have time to physically read books, and I wish I did, but I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And one of the ones that I really want to read is the original Little Mermaid.
Yes, absolutely. The Hans Christian Andersen one, which isn't actually as neat and clean as Disney sets the parade. And that's the thing. So, as to know about your background and the things that you look at and the things that I look at, I think that what happens whenever we delve into folklore, that we find things that were once comforting as kids, hearing these nursery rhymes and stuff. If you get to the very heart and origin, these are very dark, sinister things that would give any child nightmares to this day. So as we trace legends and lore back, we find out how they evolve and how they shift and how they kind of, mend themselves to whatever generation they speak to. So, when we talk about Little Red Riding Hood or even things like Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty, we find at the very origins of these stories are very dark and insidious type of human behaviors that have been all but kind of weeded out now. We get a very, very healthy dose of pablum now, right? We're not given the hardcore truth about these things. But hey, that's you and I's job to kind of shatter those images.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. I've heard some, one of my friends at work listens to audiobooks as well. And he listened to The Little Mermaid and he's like, "Man, do you know the whole story here?" And I'm like, "No." And yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to getting around to that one. But yeah,
we should do a show on that sometime. We should do a show on nursery rhymes or on children's stories, especially things like when we talk about werewolves. We talk about we overlook the Little Red Riding Hood type of a werewolf encounter. So yeah, hopefully one day we sit down, we do a show on those kind of things.
Oh, definitely, that would be awesome. I would love that. So let's get back to the folklore and stuff of creatures and that, because we were talking before we started here, and you got a new book coming out. So we wanted to kind of focus today on some of the more weird cryptid creatures from around the country and Midwest here. And let's start right now because I'm in Wisconsin. So we'll start with Hodag and move on to your other one here first. So
Yeah, well, the Hodag is an interesting creature as well, too. There was even a purported photograph of people killing one of these things, and it's very interesting that this is a regional entity, right? The same way with the region here in Pennsylvania as well, where I live, that we have these kind of unique cryptids, these very enigmatic cryptids. But not only are they enigmatic, but they're also, endemic to this area as well too, right? They're emblematic of a particular area. And even though I might not know the folklore of the hodag, or vice versa, people in your neck of the woods might not know the folklore of the squonk, but they're immediately recognizable in a way that it speaks to our humanness, right? We understand that there are things out there that we can't possibly explain away. People are seeing these things and sometimes even taking photographs of these things, whether they're staged or hoaxed or not. But there's enough tantalizing information out there to allow us to believe that these things may indeed exist.
Mm-hmm. It starts out with just one small story, one person around a campfire and talking about something that they've seen. Right. You talk about the hodag. Well, the hodag started out as basically this newspaper article came out and said that these people saw this thing in the woods. And then Eugene Shepard saw the article, read the article, and turned it into this creature that we all know and love today through metamorphosis and stuff of storytelling and the evolution of the folklore in that. But it did stem from a newspaper article of some sighting of something in the woods. So
right. If you look at the Dogman legend as well, too, that all came out of a radio show. People have been seeing these things or reporting these things. It's part of the vernacular in the local folklore of the area. But as you said, it takes that one person to kind of put it out there, and then it becomes part of the culture, right? So all these things are probably campfire stories, but somebody took it on themselves to put it into print. And then it has a kind of resonance to it that becomes more acceptable and more mainstream. So whenever we look at William T. Cox, who was from Minnesota, up around your area, he was a forester and he was a lumberman, and he knew that the ecosystem out there was very fragile and it needed to be saved. So he wrote this Fearsome Creatures of the Woodlands, something along that, but that was the case. And he starts introducing all these kind of animals, like the wampus cat and the snallygaster and the squonk as well, too. So this is somebody that was taking, as you said, lumberjacks sitting around a campfire, talking about these things that seem like, some sort of fanciful menagerie. And he takes them and he puts them into a book. So it almost becomes like a modern day bestiary, right? Whenever we talk about the Middle Ages, and we have these fanciful drawings of rhinoceroses in there, right, and elephants, because nobody ever saw these things, but the artists try to conceptualize these so people could understand, and unicorns. So you have within this collection in the Middle Ages all these strange animals, but if you start examining them even closely, more closely under a lens, you start finding those things that you thought were nothing more than myth really did have a ring of reality to them, right? They didn't come out of the imagination. There was some part about them that had a kernel of truth. And that is why I like to look at these local legends like the hodag, like the squonk, and even Bigfoot, as universal as that, that archetype has become. It's still very regional as well, too. We can go to, Florida, and it's known as the skunk ape, Sasquatch up in the Pacific Northwest, Bigfoot around other places, Momo, it has all these great names because people attach themselves to it. And then it becomes that particular area's boogeyman. It becomes that particular area's, almost like their symbol, and it's a great way to view humans' reactions to the unexplained. So as a researcher, I love to investigate Bigfoot. And as you said so eloquently at the opening, I like to investigate things that go bump in the night. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter if any of these things exist. What matters is how it affects us as human beings. So there's a lot of people out there tramping through the forest, right, looking for some sort of definitive proof. But I think that gray wilderness of the human mind is even more exciting to explore, because what's hiding in there is something that, that true nature could never conceive of, right? So we are part of this myth making on how we see the world, how we interpret it, and then essentially how we talk to other people about it. And that's what we're doing right now. We are the storytellers of today. If you're a cryptozoologist or if you're a ghost hunter, whatever the case may be, you are gathering experiences, and then you're talking to other people about the experiences. And just like the hodag, it becomes a game of telephone, and you're going to elaborate and expand on it until it becomes morphed into something completely unique from when you first started.
Mm-hmm. I have my favorite cryptid still to this day, everything is the chupacabra.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. Yes.
Exactly.
Let's talk about that for a little bit. Yeah. So whenever I was a kid, right? Whenever I was a kid, this was, almost like some sort of little porcupine type creature, right? It was like this little goblin that was covered in spikes and had like this flicking reptile type tongue and these big red glowing almond shaped eyes, to the point that people were assuming this was an alien. This has to be something otherworldly, right? And look at this, my friend. In just a couple decades, it morphed into something completely different from where it started out as, completely. And this is something that we can actually trace the modern myth building, the modern mythology that keeps on changing, because we have newspaper articles about this. We have, television reports about this kind of stuff. And as this, it's also very unique as part of a culture as well, too. And as you can see, the culture in which it started, as it starts moving, as it starts migrating, it takes the story with it. And as it goes to Florida, it starts becoming something else. And as it expands over into Texas, it becomes something else. So that little porcupine type of alien creature that was the first chupacabra from whenever I was a kid, whenever I first heard these stories, now has morphed into this kind of blue dog that inhabits the wastelands of Texas. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's exactly what we are talking about, how these things change. So that initial story has now morphed into something completely different.
Absolutely. I know Ken Gerhard personally, and he's from down in Texas and stuff like that. And he's worked with the Texas Blue Dog and Phyllis Canyon and the Chupacabra story all this time. And I asked him, well, what do you think of this? And he says, well, I don't think it's a real animal. This is why, and stuff like that. But he says, now down in Puerto Rico and in Texas, the culture is so ingrained with this that it has gone from a physical cryptid creature of the chupacabra, like you said, to basically the boogeyman, where anything that goes bump in the night, if it's a ghost in someone's house, if it's a strange sound, whatever it is, it's El Chupacabra. And it's grown into this whole cultural phenomenon from basically what it just was. But, you mentioned John Keel earlier as well. Well, John Keel, in one of his books, writes about these chupacabra style attacks over in Europe back in the 1800s or 1700s. I can't remember. But the same goats, chickens slaughtered, 2 puncture wounds, no blood. And it's the exact same MO of the Puerto Rican attacks when they first started. But here's this creature that you're talking about decades later, now in the United States or Puerto Rico. And so there's got to be this little bit of grain of truth to all this.
Absolutely. That's the whole thing. Even if we're talking about a biological animal that is known to science, it still has taken on a life of its own. So it's become something more. It's kind of like Scooby-Doo. You're trying to track down this monster. And at the end of the day, whenever you pull off the mask, it might be something that's totally recognizable. But the reason why we keep on looking is because on the off chance that you pull off that mask, it's something that we would never even conceive of.
Absolutely.
It's that chance. It's that chance that there's something out there that's uncatalogued by science. And that's really, look, we as a human race are full with hubris, right? We think that we know everything. And if something deviates from our knowledge, we simply scoff at it because we have not pinned it down on the table and eviscerated it and chopped it up and named it by some sort of Latin name to make us feel powerful, as if we have ownership over it. But there's something wild about these creatures, something that's undomesticated and maybe even undomesticatable. Maybe you can't even do that, which gives me hope. Because as much as I like electricity and all these kind of modern conveniences, and I have kids too, and I have grandkids as well, I'm still hoping that there are wild places out there where things that have not been categorized still live, and I hope that it's out there forever. Because without that mystery, then we have conquered everything, and it's a game that can never be replayed. If we eliminate, these things that we call monsters, then the only thing that we have to fear then is humanity itself. There has to be dragons out there because dragons give us hope. They give us hope that we can gather together and kind of face these kind of threats head on. And I'm not saying these things are threats, but I'm saying that they put us into our place as humans. They make us understand there's more things out there than we could possibly know.
Absolutely. That is a wonderful thought out there. And it's even, when I do a presentation on cryptozoology, and I talk about how, when even modern science, the things that we've taken apart, dissected, given that Latin name to, even these things, if we're not paid to study a specific part of that animal, we don't know. So we're still making discoveries about animals that we've known existed for years, for decades. And we're still learning things about these creatures because nobody is, taking the time to look into those things. So it's really interesting that we find out these new things about stuff that we already knew existed.
No, absolutely. It's like in the past couple of years that snakes have always been, I've always been afraid of snakes. But we have a lot of garter snakes here in Pennsylvania. And it's the past couple of years I just found out that they have they're venomous, right? They have a very it's nothing that would be harmful to people, but for other frogs and things, or for amphibians and things, it's deadly to them. So yeah, just in the past couple of years I found out that something as innocuous as a garter snake has a venom component to it. So yeah, we're learning things all the time. And like you said, if it doesn't benefit us in any way, we simply don't care.
Absolutely. Even the weird creatures, I specifically talk about the platypus in my presentation because we're going like, well, dragons, might exist, Bigfoot might exist, mermaids, and so on and so forth. And people are like, oh, those are really weird. I don't know if I can take that. I'm like, well, here's a platypus. Everybody knows what a platypus is. Do you know that they lay eggs? They're a mammal. They're this amalgamation, all this stuff. And even those, when I did the presentation, Brand New Science said now they glow under black light.
Yes, and I just heard them. Yep.
And here I thought, I put all this weird stuff in the presentation, and now I just found out recently they don't have a stomach either.
Wow.
Yeah. And so they got even weirder.
Yeah, and they shouldn't exist. I mean, whenever they first sent specimens back to England, they were this obviously was fabricated, something like a Fiji mermaid or something. But yeah, there should not be anything out there that's covered in hair, has the bill of a duck, lays eggs, has a poisonous spur underneath its one arm. It's just such a crazy animal that should not exist. But there you are.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you wanted to talk about, I hate to throw a wrench into changing topics here, but you wanted to bring up the one that you're working on right now. You got a brand new book coming out, and this is one that you don't hear. Lisa Russell, who is Cryptid Comforts, really fabulous person. She's been on my show before as well, promoting her event, but she's bringing a lot of focus to this creature in the last couple of years. It's her mascot and everything. And so I think I would love to have you talk about this, and we're going to show the event as well here right away. So she's got Squonkapalooza coming up. I had the I was going to say misfortune. What is it? I had the privilege of speaking at it. I think it was last year. Everything's fluid to me, but Squonkapalooza. So what is a squonk? Tell everybody that.
That's the thing. What is a squonk? So again, we talked about William Cox, the guy from Minnesota that was collecting all these lumberjack stories, and one of them was the squonk, and it was said to be this very ugly little creature. Now remember, it has no fangs, it has no claws. This is something not to be feared in any way. He was just kind of gathering stories about this one creature, but it was said, to be so ugly that it avoided, seeing its reflection in water or anything. So it usually went out at night, and it would often cry. I mean, you could locate it by hearing the sound of it crying because it was so forlorn, because it was so ugly, and it had, nothing in nature wanted to accept it or anything like that. So, people have tried to catch it. There were reports of people gathering up in sacks, and by the time they got home, they opened up the sack, and it was just filled with tears because these things would actually dissolve into tears. So the squonk is an interesting creature because it's explained in the book that it went from deserts into swamps, and then eventually ended up in the hemlock forest of Pennsylvania. And this was the last safe refuge for it. Now, again, this was about 1908. And as we look into details, right around that time is whenever we were doing great deforestation on this particular region. We were strip mining, we were tearing the forest down. So all these old growth forests now were barren. And not only that, but right around this time, and a few generations before this, we start eliminating things like the cougar and the elk and the wolf from Pennsylvania, and even the white-tailed deer up into the 1920s was nearly extinct from Pennsylvania. So as he was writing, he was kind of drawing a parallel, I think, to the elk and the wolverine and all these other kind of creatures that were disappearing, to the squonk and the snallygaster and the wampus cat, because he was giving this kind of imaginary litany of creatures while very real creatures were disappearing at the time. So it was kind of like a counterpoint at the fact. So I didn't think there was ever any good research set out about the squonk. So I thought, in order to have a good book on the squonk, I'm going to have at least 20,000 words, because that's how it works in the world of publication. You want to have something that you can put together and sell. So the book that I'm actually still writing, it's still being the process of being written, and I want to premiere it at the next Squonkapalooza, but I'm trying to write a historical account of research into the squonk. Now, I can't find any eyewitness accounts of the squonk. So again, we're going back to the idea that this is something told around a campfire. But what I can do in the book is make comparisons and analogies to other creatures that went through a similar fate as this supposed squonk.
Very interesting. So what creatures have you found that have a similar fate?
Well, I think when we look at things that have went extinct by human hands, it becomes quite a testimony to why the squonk would be crying. Of course, we hear things like the dodo bird and the passenger pigeon and all these things. But, all these great creatures that we have given names to that are no longer there simply because of our greed or whatever. Now, we do have some Lazarus species. We do have species that seemingly come back from the dead. The ivory-billed woodpecker, for instance, has been seen again. So that's always a plus. So whenever we talk about cryptozoology, it's not always monster hunting, right? It could be something as simple, also looking for a woodpecker as well, too. It's these unexplained or unknown animals that are out there, or animals that shouldn't be there anymore. So hopefully we can save the rest of certain species of rhinoceros, certain species of whale, because these are very close to becoming squonks, a species of leopard as well too. Because what happens is if we don't take the kind of like the information that squonk has given us, if we take away its habitat, then it becomes something that, it weeps, and I think there's a lot of animals out there weeping just like the squonk because we're doing the exact same thing. And I would hate to see 100 years from now where we're putting on a similar type of palooza event to talk about a species of whale that went extinct, or a certain type of leopard or something, or rhinoceros, and they make them into little plush animals. So let's have the squonk to be the last of its kind that has to be mourned over, such as this. He could kind of be the poster child for an ecological movement where we attempt to preserve rather than eradicate.
I love that. I love that so much. And you're absolutely right. There are so many creatures that, cryptozoology, we always think of like the folklore and the fantasy and stuff like that. But there are so many animals like the thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger, that is thought to be extinct, but people are still seeing it. And we're still searching for that. And that is a cryptid. That is exactly the definition. Yeah. So.
That's right. Yeah, and I'm hoping, that's one of the cryptids. I made a prediction a couple years ago that would be the big, that it would be uncovered, and it would show that there would be still some out there. And we get little fleeting glimpses of things from time to time, but nothing definitive. But I'm hoping that this does prove itself to be something that has been able to have some sort of foothold in the dwindling ecology of Australia and Tasmania, and it does show that it is still living out there today.
Absolutely. So I wanted to ask you, you talked about this book several times that was written about these different fearsome creatures and stuff like that. So when I think you're probably familiar with the whole mythos around the War of the Worlds, the radio show that came out, and everyone thought that this was an actual live radio news broadcast and stuff that happened, and this has become the stuff of legends, as it were. So when this book came out, the Fearsome Creatures books, how many people do you think actually took this as the Bible of what's out in the woods? How did that affect the mythology and how people viewed the woods?
Yeah, see, this is a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because we in the 21st century can have a book published, on Amazon or whatever, without any kind of scrutiny whatsoever. But back in the day, a book that was put out, a book that was published, was a true accomplishment, right? Because what you have to do is convince somebody that owns a company that your work has merit. And not only does it have merit, but it's worthy of being disseminated, because the publisher wants to make money off of it. So we have to go through this kind of gauntlet in order to get books published. Now everything is on demand, right? Or you can throw something up on the internet. You really don't need that kind of scrutiny anymore. So whenever a book came out in the early 1900s, this was something that people just took as, gospel, right? This is something that, that people obviously researched and put together. And a lot of people were doing this kind of stuff. It wasn't just here. There were these kind of, I'm trying to think of, I think the guy's name was Burgess, Burges, if I'm not mistaken. And right around this time, he was putting out these bestiaries as well, too, of magnificent beasts that they're said to exist. And, he had unicorns in there, and he had griffins in there. And he also had a smattering of other animals that were still, that are known to science now, but they were only hinted at in the mythology at the time. So I think whenever we're dealing with this particular time period, we were not so jaded, as it were. And if somebody put out a book about, unknown animals, that we would have kind of feasted on it, thinking that this was true to fact. I think that's probably what the general population did feel.
Interesting. It fascinates me. Like I told you, I listen to a lot of books on tape and stuff like that. And I listen to, John Keel, Ivan T. Sanderson, and the old authors of cryptozoology and stuff like that, On the Trail of Hidden Beasts and all that stuff. And it just fascinates me that these books are written where it's not, well, maybe Bigfoot exists or maybe this is real, but they write it like in the Himalayas, this fantastic, abominable snowman travels. We found the footprints. The locals see it all the time, and they write it as it's a fact. And it's what happened there? What happened between this animal exists to nowadays when we're questioning that?
Right. And these are the books that I cut my teeth on, right? As a kid, finding these books and reading them, because these were real scientists that were talking about not only about the creature itself, but also talking about things like the populations that were the indigenous populations around which these animals existed as well, too. So it was kind of like an ethnographic study. It was a sociological study. And it just happens to be that there's an unknown cryptid within that area as well. So again, I just took it as basically I was reading a textbook. And so I don't know why that ever changed. I think a lot of it, like we talked about before, was the idea that we became much more jaded just as a human race. We don't start seeing things as incredulously as we did. We look at things and we doubt, and that kind of innocence is gone now. And I wish it weren't that way, because like you said, that's very true. The writers at that particular time period, and we're not talking ancient history here at all, but 40 years ago or 50 years ago, they were just basically collecting these stories about an animal that they knew existed. And if you try that now, you would be laughed out of it, and nobody would publish it. That's the thing, is nobody would publish it. Now, I do remember whenever I was in college, I took a anthropology 101 course, and there was a book that was written by two professors, and in the one chapter they talked about the possibility of the abominable snowman being a relic population of the Gigantopithecus that survived up into an historic area that actually led credence to the abominable snowman legend. So, I mean, there are people out there, Grover Krantz as well too, Jeff Meldrum. There are people out there that do hint at the possibility that these things are out there, they're flesh and blood. But the whole idea is to stay employed. That's the biggest problem, because if you go out there and start sounding like you're a lunatic, you're going to lose everything you worked for. It's sad, but it's true. So how many people do you think are out there in academia that can show some sort of insight, shed some light on these things, that will not speak because they're afraid of losing their job?
Oh, absolutely. That is a big deal. I know Amy Boo runs the Project Zoo book, and she has all these academic people that, kind of meet in secret in this organization to discuss this on a very serious level, these different animals and stuff, but they can't do it publicly because, like, as you said, they're going to lose the funding. They're going to lose the credibility out in the scientific world.
That's right. Yeah, I think that when we do these conferences, and I love doing conferences, and I look forward to them, but instead of doing them in campgrounds and instead of doing them, in civic centers and things like that, it's a shame we can't move them into college campuses and have real people. By real people, I mean people that have, the background or the knowledge in certain disciplines, sit down and debate this kind of stuff. We really do need that. And once we show some academic light in this, we won't be so marginalized, right? Right now, we are still living on the periphery because mainstream science hasn't invited us in. But I think that if mainstream science would at least take the step and saying, all right, let's investigate this. And it doesn't have to be biology. It could be sociology. It could be, religious studies. It could be a whole bunch of different type of scenarios. But unless we sit down and we debate it and look at it from that point of view, we're never going to be taken seriously. So many people in this field, my friend, are intelligent, and they have degrees, and they have the experience, and they have everything that needs to be there in order to present papers to a jury of their peers, right? But science will not accept that because it simply doesn't exist. And that's only because in their mind, they believe that it doesn't exist. And that's a sad, sad commentary on humanity as well, that we like to fear the dark, but we also don't want to turn a light on to chase the darkness away.
Absolutely. People fear the unknown, and the unknown
They
is
fear the unknown. That's right. That's right.
scary.
Yeah, but again, like I said, I still want the unknown to be out there, but I also don't want to see people that I've interviewed and my colleagues and myself as well too being called fringe idiots and things like that, because that's not who we are. We are looking for this stuff. Now, I will tell you, I've never seen anything. I've had some anecdotal things happen. I've heard vocalizations that I couldn't describe, and I found some imprints that I couldn't quite define about exactly what it was. But I've never seen anything like that, and I'm still looking because I hear all these other kind of stories and all that stuff. So that's what keeps me going. But there's a lot of people out there though that set us back. And Benjamin Radford for Skeptical Inquiry magazine, he said the main problem with the Bigfoot researchers is not the backlash from science. It's from other Bigfoot researchers, right? I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are nothing more than talking heads. I find it interesting when I go to conferences and I see people that I have admired in the field of the paranormal, whether it be ghost hunters or, cryptozoologists, who have very little working knowledge of what we suppose is their level of expertise. I mean, there are very few people out there. I mean, Adam Davies, who I enjoy very much, Ken Gearhart, Lau Blackburn. I mean, there are very, very good people out there, but there's a lot of people out there that are nothing more than charlatans. And I'm sure that you've been introduced to those people yourself. They look good on camera. They have no research out there whatsoever, but somehow they're making a living because people suppose they're an expert in the field whenever in actuality they have no knowledge about this thing that they're looking for.
You think that, we want academia and science and stuff to take this serious and look into this, yet here's all the Bigfoot researchers, cryptozoologists and stuff that cannot even agree on what Bigfoot is or what it does. You have the whole woo camp, you have the interdimensional people, you have the UFO people, you have the flesh and blood ape creatures and stuff. And who's to say which one of us is right or what this thing actually is? And that's the problem, is because we're all still infighting about that we haven't even decided what this thing is, and we want someone else to take it serious.
That's right. That's a great point too. We're all infighting, and we're all lashing out at each other for an animal that may not even exist, right? We're sitting here arguing about flesh and blood or interdimensionality on an animal that we don't even know was out there. So I think that we need to come together. Let's share. There's a lot of people also in this field that, as you said, they're the flesh and blood camp or they're interdimensionality camp. And if they get any kind of information that goes against what they already preconceived, they throw it out. So there's a lot of information that's being overlooked as well.
Absolutely. I want to swing back here to you brought up the indigenous people and the tribes and stuff around the world that see these things, from Mokele Membe down in the Congo to just the gorillas when we first heard about these things, and the native tribes and stuff that have seen them and told the white people that came into the area that these things were real. We overlook this information so much because these people are out there living off the land day to day. Their life depends on what they see. They're not out there to make $1 or sell a book or what have you. They're there to say, when I go out in the woods and I hear this noise, my life is in danger. And this is where we're getting a lot of these stories. I mean, going back to the original stories of things, back in the lumberjack era and stuff, when you have the Native Americans and stuff telling us that are coming through the area what's out in these woods. So how important is that, and how has that changed the way that we see all this stuff?
Well, I think it's of vital importance, especially when we talk about things like the Thunderbird and the Bigfoot and all these great tales that really have its origin story in indigenous populations, right? So we are colonizers. Anybody from Europe, we come in and we subjugate a people that we see as inferior to us. Everything that they own, we can appropriate and make it our own. And if it has value, we attach ourselves to it. And if it doesn't have value, we kind of throw it to the wayside. So I think at the very beginning, this idea of manifest destiny, this idea of moving out and spreading out and infiltrating this great North American continent, stories weren't that important, right? We would hear them, but it's at the end of the day, it's not going to make us any money, right? So it's odd that it wasn't until the 1950s and 1960s that Bigfoot and Sasquatch starts coming into our culture. It becomes part of our zeitgeist because we start going out in the Pacific Northwest and cutting down forest, right? So it was almost it's a very unique time because it was almost as if all of those legends that were discarded as nothing more than savage tales were now coming back and confronting us, right? Because it wasn't until we start taking bulldozers and plowing over old growth trees do these things kind of assert themselves. And then we have to sit back and think, well, is there something out there rather than just our own, economic fortunes, right? Is there something else out there? So I think that is the way we should look at things. The First Nations people and the various tribes in the lower 48 as well too, all have this tale told of creatures that are very much like us, yet they live right on the periphery. And sometimes they're magic. Sometimes they straddle the world between the mundane and the sacred. So we talk about interdimensionality. They were even talking about that, thousands of years ago. So we hear these stories, but we don't acknowledge them until it has some sort of impact on what we are trying to do. And it wasn't until, like I said, in the Pacific Northwest, whenever tracks start being uncovered around demolition sites where we're cutting down trees, or things start showing up missing because for whatever reason, as we're going there to cut down these trees, something is coming out of the woods telling us not to be in there.
No,
unique time.
Yeah, it seems to be this common theme of the different things that we've talked about here is very like Lorax.
It is. Exactly. And that's great because Dr. Seuss in his myth building as well too gives us a figure like the Lorax. And if this was written 100 years ago and he said that it was recorded around a campfire by lumberjacks, we might have a Lorax festival someplace as well. Again, we talked at the very initial, when we sat down for the very first time today, we talked about how each subsequent culture redefines the myths in which we were given, right? So absolutely, there's no reason why that the squonk cannot become the Lorax or the Bigfoot becomes the Lorax. And I think that these are the poster children, the forgotten poster children, kind of the bastard poster children for an ecological movement. And look, I'm not a vegetarian. I drive a car that takes gas. I would love to be one of those kumbaya guys that sit around hugging trees, but I do not have that in me. But what I do have in me is the idea that whenever I was a kid, I used to go out and explore in woods that are no longer there, right? I'm 55 years old, and the things that I used to enjoy as a kid are now gone in that very, very brief time period. And as a historian, as someone who looks over history, we see that we've destroyed things that we can never get back again, right? And sometimes we make such a push into the environment that we cause animals to go extinct. And at that point, there's no going back. So as far as my environmental outlook is, that the things that I had as a kid, I don't think it's too much to ask that my grandkids could have that and their grandkids could have that as well too. So if you want to talk about a Lorax or a Bigfoot or a squonk, being that symbol of the unknown, the wildness that we need to exist. We need this to exist. Then I think that's very appropriate. I think that's an appropriate thing, and we really do kind of need to gather around, because the woods are where we it's our oxygen, it's our lungs, right? And if we think of this world as a human body, we're already suffering enough. So I think that we really do need to step back, let the wild things be wild things, and we all need to just get together and preserve rather than corrupt and just resources. I'm okay with paying $3.50 in gas if that means that there are Arctic wastelands and there are national parks that are never going to be touched. I'm okay with that.
Absolutely. I think that is a beautiful place to end today's episode of Save the Woods, Save the Wild Places. I love that.
That's right. Where the wild things are. That was a great book whenever I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And, I still want to go dance with the wild things someplace. And let's just hope that they're still going to be out there. And that's why this is such a great show, because we get to talk about these fabulous creatures. And, I hope to hear people respond, because it's very important that this is a forum that allows people to interact with things that we say. So I would love to hear some sort of feedback regarding this. So,
very good. Very good. We are pre-recorded today, just so you know, if you have left comments or anything throughout the show, because this will air live. But so definitely check that out, and I will send you the link.
I'll read them.
What's that? You'll read them?
I'll read those comments.
Very good. Very good. Awesome, man. Well, I know you're going to be at a bunch of events coming up here, so let's talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get to more online stuff of where people can find you. So, coming up, you're going to be at Squonkapalooza this year again.
I am. I'm going to be speaking about the squonk. I give an hour lecture on the squonk, its origins, and kind of the things that we talked about as well today as well too. And I'm just excited about it. I think it's one of my favorite festivals.
Very cool. August 2nd, 2025 here in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, for anybody that can't see the graphic. It's free. It's free. Absolutely. Very cool. And then you're going to be in, where is this? Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
That's right. And I'm going to be talking about the werewolf/dogman down there and how it relates to the area of the land between the lakes, which isn't very far from this place.
Very cool. And then finally, GoblinCon. I hope that people watch this on YouTube, and if not, go look at GoblinCon, because this is an amazing logo. I love this.
I do too, and I am so utterly excited for this event. The Hopkinsville Goblin incident is something that's really sparked my curiosity ever since I've been a kid. And this is the 70th anniversary of that particular encounter. And I'm just looking forward to going down there. I don't know exactly what I'm going to be talking about yet, but it will be something cool.
Very cool. And that is October 17th and 18th in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. So
that's right.
Do you plan on having the new Squonk book out for this year's Squonkapalooza, or is this next year's?
No, it will be out for this year. So I've given myself 5 weeks to complete it. Now it's already rough drafted. It's already researched out and everything like that. So I'm going to give myself 5 weeks to fine tune it, and then off to the publisher. And I'm hoping that Small Town Monsters will put it out, because they do such a great job, and I'm a big fan of those folks over there as well too. But if they don't put it out, it will still be out by the time the Squonkapalooza comes out.
Very cool, man. Awesome. So tell everybody, where can they find more about you? Where can they find out more information on all your events and stuff coming up?
Well, absolutely. So I do have a website. It's cryptoguru.com, where you can go and find my sites, or my place where I'll be. Also Facebook, Ronald L. Murphy Jr. is my author page, so you can follow me on there as well too. And my email, I'll give you my email. It's Ronald L. Murphy Jr. at yahoo.com. So it's Ronald L. Murphy Jr. Anybody wants to drop me a line to talk, I'm if you agree with me, if you disagree, that's how we learn. And whoever wants to reach out, I'm looking forward to it.
Very cool, man. Well, it's been absolute pleasure talking to you. It's a great episode. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, my friend, and let's do this again sometime.
Oh, absolutely. I will hold you to your the fairy tale episode that we were talking about at the beginning. I think that'd be a really cool episode as well.
I'm looking forward to it, sir.
Very good. Anybody that's listening, if you have any questions or comments, because we're not live, shoot them to me and we'll get them over to Ron, and we'll do another episode on that as well. So sounds good, man. All right. I will talk to you later. Take care, man.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys, that is our episode for this week. Thank you all for watching, tuning in, and joining us here on the show. Remember to like, subscribe, and share all things here on the Untold Radio Network. And if you get a chance, head on out to Squonkapalooza or the Fearsome Folklore Festival, and of course, Goblin Con. Check out that logo. That is freaking cool. That is a freaking cool logo. Look at that. I don't know. I love it. All right. So until next time, guys. Check out the show notes for all of Ron's links. And until next time, I'll see you on the edge.